Fresh meat.
Welcome to the best horror movie you never saw video edition, where we shine a light on horror movies that you may have missed, haven't seen in a long time, or just plain forgot about. On this episode, we're looking at Anthony Hickox's gloriously off-the-wall Waxwork, starring Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, Dana Ashbrook, Patrick Macnee, and John Rhys-Davies and David Warner.
I see you're interested in my waxworks.
Get ready for a delightful dip into a comedy horror cult classic. The setup is simple, yet gloriously inspired. A group of students discover the hard way that the creepy local wax museum is a deadly place to be, and it's not because of something so predictable as the figures come to life. No, they exist in alternate universes.
Oh, shit.
So once you step behind that velvet rope that separates you and them, you're stuck with them. And they really, really don't mess around. So welcome to the Waxwork.
Thanks. I'm gonna go in now.
The story behind how the film came to be is an amusing one, proving sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. Then, a rock promoter, Anthony Hickox, flew from his hometown of London to Los Angeles after impressing people in the industry with a short film he'd made. While there, he crashed his car into producer Stefan Ehrenberg's car, which turned out to be nothing serious, thankfully, but it would also certainly change Hickox's life forever. Ehrenberg, it just so happened, was a burgeoning producer looking to make a movie, and it also just so happened that Hickox was desperate for cash. After a chat, Hickox went off and wrote Waxwork in a matter of days. He was paid $3,000 upon delivery. The writer-director claims he'd always thought about making a movie set in a wax museum, inspired by the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in England that he used to visit as a child. The script got passed around, and predictably, everyone turned it down, including Vestron Pictures. However, the actual head of Vestron hadn't read the script, and it was passed before it even got to him. So when producer Dan Ireland made sure the studio boss read it, the man loved it and gave it the green light. Before he knew it, Hickox, still in his 20s, was now in charge of his first feature film. Incidentally, Hickox had filmmaking in his blood, which didn't hurt. His father was Douglas Hickox, director of films like The Giant Behemoth, Theater of Blood, and Zulu Dawn, while his mother was Anne V. Coates, an Oscar-nominated editor of films like Lawrence of Arabia, In the Line of Fire, and Out of Sight. Pretty cool lineage. I recall seeing Waxwork for the first time as a wee babe. Well, okay, I was probably about 10. It was on one of those up-all-night shows, maybe the one hosted by Gilbert Gottfried, or perhaps Joe Bob Briggs. That's when I was devouring all kinds of horror trash, and here was another feast for my sick, young mind. But a funny thing happened. It turned out Waxwork wasn't your typical B-movie fare. It had a humorous vibe, close to tongue-in-cheek, and the characters weren't brainless fools, but smart and charming.
You're very sweet, but you just don't get it.
There was a distinct visual style which was elegant yet playful. And of course, the rock and roll horror sequences involving helpless protagonists being sucked in the various insane scenarios within the Wax Museum.
And now another two.
And you're telling me that they've been kidnapped and boiled in wax?
I don't think I had ever seen a movie that thrust us into so many different horror movie worlds. The movie manages to fit in Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and plenty more, and they're pretty fearsome creatures indeed, dishing out some gnarly kills. Add to that, we get zombies, Jack the Ripper, the Marquis de Sade, a man-eating plant, and even a demon baby. What more can you want?
You little bastard!
It had been a long time since I had seen Waxwork until I programmed it for the Alamo Drafthouse in 2018, which gave me an opportunity to revisit it 30 years after its release. I was caught up in its crazy universe all over again. I had the pleasure of introducing it to some friends who had never seen it before, and this is the kind of movie that is so much fun to watch through fresh eyes. I especially appreciated the cast of the film this time. The flick is filled with horror stars from several eras. You have the younger, recognizable faces like Zach Galligan, Deborah Foreman, and Dana Ashbrook. And on the other side of the spectrum, acting vets like David Warner, Patrick Macnee, and John Rhys-Davies. Hickox wisely recognized that casting is half the battle, and populating the movie with interesting faces goes a long way towards inviting us into the surreal universe. Speaking of interesting, who could forget the diminutive Hans, who famously figured prominently on the film's unforgettable poster. Any 80s kid saw that poster frequently during weekly trips to the video store. Of course, at the center of film is Zach Galligan, only a few years removed from his breakout turn in Gremlins. The character he plays here, Mark, isn't as instantly relatable as Billy in Gremlins, but the longer the film goes on, the more you like and respect him.
Hey. It's okay. It's all right.
It seems initially that he might be your average preppy dope, but as events get more and more dire around him, he really steps up and becomes the hero we can root for. The friendship between Galligan and Foreman's characters is genuinely sweet, and Deborah gives it her all as a damsel in distress. And thankfully, Sarah is a virgin, so her chances of surviving are really good. The group floozy? Well, she doesn't fare too well. One interesting thing about the protagonists is that they're fairly well off, living posh lifestyles far removed from the teens we usually see in movies like this. It always seemed to me that the kids in the 80 horrors flicks came from working class backgrounds, so it was somewhat refreshing to see a social status differently represented. Of course, coming from a middle-class background myself, it was also somewhat refreshing to see these rich kids get swallowed up in all kinds of ghoulish mayhem. Score 1 for the poor kids. But let's get to the really good stuff. The makeup effects by legendary Bob Keane are tremendous and very icky indeed. Prior to Waxwork, Keane had worked on some small films like the original Star Wars trilogy, Life Force, and Hellraiser Parts 1 and 2. One of my favorite bits involves the poor sucker who had his leg feasted on by vampires and the absolute bloodbath that ensues within the otherwise pristine white room. You'll never look at a champagne bottle the same way again, let me tell ya. It's a terrific set piece and a great example of the nutty tone this film has. It's usually quite funny, but there's also no denying it has several disturbing moments and sights. Hickox is thoroughly successful in establishing its quirky personality immediately in the opening minute of the film as a man's head is shoved into a fireplace while Benny Goodman's swinging classic Sing, Sing, Sing plays merrily in the background. Gotta grab him right off the bat, right? What's really fun, however, is how much of a love letter to horror cinema Waxwork is, with plenty of references to the classics of the past. Waxwork doesn't rip them off necessarily, as much as pay loving homage to them, such as the sequence with the mummy.
Heavens, it's the mummy.
Shit! Let's get the hell out of here!
Which even utilizes Tchaikovsky's famed Swan Lake, just as the original 1931 mummy did. That's another really fun sequence, by the way, featuring a mummy that is actually pretty creepy, a rarity. There's also a very nice squashed head if you're into that sort of thing. And also a Night of the Living Dead homage. When it comes to picking a favorite scene from the film, well, that's a tough one. Obviously, all of the fantasy horror sequences are terrific with their fabulous creatures and freaky gore effects, but I've always especially loved the werewolf scene. The wolf effects by Bob Keane are truly great. The werewolf is a nightmarish looking thing, and as a bonus, a guy played by the director's brother, no less, gets ripped in half in amazing fashion. Something I'll never forget seeing when I was that young kid seated in front of the TV. Hickox himself appears as an English prince during the Marquis de Sade sequence, which is fitting seeing as the director supposedly threw some infamously freaky parties.
So fit. So unbroken.
It's just odd that he didn't give himself as insane of a death scene as he did his brother. Everything leads up to a wonderfully chaotic finale where the wax figures finally come to life in the real world, but are thwarted by Patrick Macnee's Sir Wilfrid, who's been waiting most of his life to combat the evil in the waxworks. As Hickox tells it, the original ending was a more elaborate time-jumping affair that ultimately ended up being integral in the sequel, but because the production had run out of time and money, they had one day to shoot the final pub fight, which is how Hickox describes it. It's an apt description, and somehow it's a fitting climax to a movie that already had been pretty wild. Why not just have everyone beating the crap out of each other in shameless faction? Waxwork is nothing if not confident in its own go-for-broke attitude. As an aside, I recommend watching the movie with audio commentary from Zach Galligan and Anthony Hickox. It's funny, frequently self-deprecating, and very informative. The Blu-ray released a handful of years ago from Lionsgate is a beaut, and it also contains Waxwork 2, Lost in Time, which is an even crazier film if you can believe it, and might make for a suitable best horror movie you never saw subject somewhere down the line. Taken together, the two make for a supremely entertaining and frequently mind-boggling double feature. More than anything, Waxwork is just plain fun. It doesn't take itself very seriously, but its plot has enough forward momentum for you to become invested in the characters' fates. It's got boundless energy, it's solid on every technical level, and one can't help but appreciate its devotion to the horror classics that helped get it here. As the end credits song indicates, it's a party.
It's my party and I'll cry if I want to.
It's movies like Waxwork that help mold and warp my impressionable young mind. I'll be forever grateful. Thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Videos channel, tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest videos. We're an independent company, and we appreciate all your support.